Okay, here we go. It's Monday, January 13th. We've got a ton to cover from over the weekend. We recap Ohio State and Texas in the college football playoff semifinal. We'll also go over the NFL wildcard weekend, including all of the conversations surrounding Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. We've got updates regarding Pete Alonso, Jack Flaherty, Anthony Santander. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings, on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, so, very busy weekend. It started Friday night. We had the college football playoff. The second game of the semifinal. We already had Notre Dame moving on. And so now it was Ohio State and Texas. It was their turn to figure out who was going to be the second team to play in the championship next Monday. Ohio State was up 21-14 with just over 3 minutes left in the game. Texas had the ball in the red zone. Quinn Ewers gets hit while throwing by Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer then scoops up the ball, takes it all the way down to the house, and scores a touchdown. And the little fun fact I saw, I think they said it on the broadcast, was that those two, Jack Sawyer and Quinn Ewers, they were roommates back when Quinn Ewers was at Ohio State. And so Ohio State ends up winning the game 28-14. So now it's Ohio State, Notre Dame. Look, this is a fun matchup. You've got two historic, I keep thinking about franchise, two historic schools playing for the first ever expanded playoff, college football playoff. And I think that it's fitting that we get a matchup like this. Two schools who are going to show up. Well, every school shows up in the college football playoff, but two schools who are historic are going to be rabid, so it'll be a ton of fun. And that game is a week from today, January 20th. Okay, let's go on to the NFL. So, it was wild card weekend. It was not super wild card weekend, as it used to be called. And the weekend started off with the Chargers and the Texans. And everybody and their mother thought that the Chargers were going to go into Texas. Texas was too beat up. And when I spoke about this game last week, I said, the way the Texans will win this game is by showing up on defense. And showing up they did. I was obviously very wrong about this game. Justin Herbert was atrocious. 4 interceptions. They couldn't get the run game going. J.K. Dobbins had 26 yards on 9 carries. Gus Edwards had 22 yards on 7 carries. But look, let's give Texas all the credit. They did exactly what they needed to do. C.J. Stroud was good enough. That's all he needed to be. Because when you have D'Amico Ryan's run defense, and you're picking off the opposing quarterback 4 times, you don't need to be excellent on offense. And CJ Stroud did not need to do that. He had 1 touchdown, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon had a touchdown, but besides for that, it was the 4 interceptions and the stand-up play of the defense. And man, does it have to kill to be a Chargers fan. It has to hurt today to be a Chargers fan. You go from one quarterback in Phillip Rivers who could not perform in the playoffs, and Justin Herbert seemingly picked up the baton. He is doing exactly what his predecessor did. And you thought with Harbaugh coming in, changing the culture, here's a football guy. He goes viral every couple of weeks for saying something funny about how much he's obsessed with football, for catching balls pregame with gloves on with his sweatshirt tucked in. You thought he'd come in and change the culture. But here we are another year and another early golf tee time. How are the Chargers going to turn this around? How is Justin Herbert going to figure this out? If he wants to be in the conversation with the Burrows, with the Mahomes, with Josh Allen, with CJ Stroud, I just don't get how he can put himself on that type of status with performances like this year in, year out. Finishing off his season like this year in, year out. Justin Herbert is at least one tier behind those guys. At least. And until he can prove he can win in the playoffs, he's not going to be even close. He doesn't even sniff those guys. Josh Allen yesterday took care of business. Lamar on Saturday took care of business in the wild card round. Yeah, the Chargers were on the road. They were the better team. You have to take care of business there. Let's not pretend like Josh Allen has in the last 5 years hasn't gone on the road and taken care of business. Let's not pretend like Patrick Mahomes hasn't done that. Last year he walked into Buffalo and beat them in their own house. A good team. Not an injury-ridden Texans team. Don't get me wrong. Give them all their credit. Give them all the credit in the world for winning that game. They played to their strengths and won the game. And frankly, I'll get into that at the end of the week. I think the Texans have a nice chance against the Chiefs. But man, is there a lot to rethink in LA after that game? And so that was the first game Saturday. Now the second game Saturday was one I said last week was going to be an absolute blowout. I said the Ravens would stomp all over the Steelers. And stomp over them they did. They won 28-14. They won by 14, but it could have been 40. The Steelers could barely get anything going offensively. If you watched this game, look, Russ ended up with 270 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. But it was just one of those games where the numbers did not match what we were watching. A lot of those numbers were in the fourth quarter, already coming from behind. And so the story online was not about the Ravens winning. It was about the Steelers losing, and more specifically, it was a lot about Mike Tomlin. It was about people calling for his job. People saying, how is it this guy gets so much credit for making the playoffs every year, but he can't accomplish anything? Haven't won a playoff game since 2015. They won 1 Super Bowl early in his tenure as head coach of the Steelers, but nothing since. On the very first show of this program, of this show, episode 001, I spoke about the Steelers, whether they were pretenders or contenders this season. And I emphasized that the Steelers were clearly pretenders. That this team was going to go nowhere. They weren't good enough. The offense was clearly not good enough, and I was right about that. Now, the thing that I was wrong about was I also said in that same rant, I said Mike Tomlin's a top 5 coach in the NFL in the last 20 years. And you know what? I still believe that that's true. And I still think that the Steelers should hold on to him. I understand the stats that go against him. He hasn't won a playoff game since 2015. He's won that Super Bowl early on. But we can put value in his uncanny success in the regular season. And look, we're at a turning point now. I think that we've reached the boiling point where he's had so many good seasons in a row, and he's been able to hide behind that. I think that shield, though, has gotten too small, and he is now exposed. Big Ben left 2 seasons ago. It's crazy that's only been 2 seasons. 3 seasons, the end of 2022. Mike Tomlin's calling card has been his defense. He has always won because his defense is so overpowering, and he is able to game plan for opposing teams so well that he masks the deficiencies on offense. And the thing is for him now that his shield is too small, that he is exposed, this offseason, he needs to find a way to fix the offense. He needs to get the offensive coordinator situation right, whether he's keeping who he currently has or finds a new one. But more desperately, he needs to get his quarterback situation right. Sean Payton, even though we saw him get blown out yesterday, Sean Payton relied on Drew Brees in the same way Mike Tomlin relied on Ben Roethlisberger for so long. By the way, they both, for as great of a reputation as Sean Payton has, yes, he's made deeper playoff runs, it feels like. He also only won one Super Bowl with Drew Brees. So, it's kind of a fair comparison. But look what Sean Payton's been able to do. In his second act with the Broncos, he failed with Russell Wilson, and he had to figure out who was going to lead his second act. And he found his guy. Mike Tomlin desperately needs his own Bo Nix. He needs to find the guy that is going to lead his second act post the quarterback that was able to give him so much success early on. I don't know who that will be. I don't think it's Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson said yesterday that he hopes he's back with the Steelers. If Mike Tomlin wants success and wants to end this narrative that he's a regular season coach and that he can't win in the playoffs anymore, he has to find his guy. So whether that's in this draft, whether it's someone that's a free agent, whether he's trading up in the draft, Mike Tomlin is not going to fix this narrative by running out Russell Wilson again next season. And he will not fix the narrative by running out Justin Fields next season. He is going to have to figure out a way to fix his offensive situation, and more specifically, fix his quarterback situation. Okay, so then we started out Sunday, 1 o'clock, Bills-Broncos. The Broncos got out to a hot start here. Bo Nix tossed a bomb. They went up 7-0, but that was all the scoring they would do. Bills end up winning 31-7. Look, the Bills looked great. Defense looked great. The offense looked great. Sean McDermott spoke about after the game how all phases were working, and they were. And by the way, I was wrong about Broncos covering +9. I was right about Bills' money line, but I was wrong about Broncos covering. And for a while there, I thought that I was going to have, and I was going to look genius for saying that. If you don't know, last week I said Broncos +9. If you want to be cute, you would do Broncos +9, Bills' money line. I was so convinced that the Broncos would cover the 9, but the Bills would win. But I digress. Next week, we get what could be the greatest game of the season. Something to make up for what was a lackluster wildcard weekend. One with mostly blowouts and bad games and bad play. We're getting so much conversation about who the MVP is. Is it Josh Allen? Is it Lamar Jackson? And now, they get to settle it for themselves. And as a Bills fan, am I nervous about this game? I frankly do not feel good at all about the Bills winning this game. I think Derrick Henry is so good the Bills' secondary is so except they looked pretty good against the run defense yesterday. But we'll get into a preview for that later in the week. But this is going to be such a fun game. I'm so looking forward to it, as much as I'm dreading it. But we'll obviously get into that a little more later in the week. Okay. So then we got the first NFC game. And the Eagles won 22-10. Packers were down 16-10 in the fourth, but couldn't pull it out. And ultimately, the story for the Packers here was that they could not get enough out of their offense. And I said last week, Josh Jacobs has to step up. And I said Jaden Reed was going to need to also step up with Christian Watson injured. And those two just were not enough firepower for the Packers. That being said, for the Eagles, it does not look so promising. If Jalen Hurts doesn't get healthier, they might be in trouble. This NFC is wide open. I want to put both the Lions and the Eagles on upset watch next week. I would not be shocked. And I don't even know. We don't even know what the final matchups are. We know the Lions are going to play the Commanders. But I genuinely think we might be coming out of next week with two upsets in the NFC. I was not impressed at all by the Eagles yesterday. Didn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Jalen Hurts clearly is playing injured. You saw a couple of situations there where he took a slide. Maybe he could have extended the play a little more. Let's not act like the 2 seed dominated the 7 seed. They're going to have trouble. If the Eagles want to make a big run, and they do end up making a big run, it'll be because they really turned it around. We'll see what I end up choosing at the end of the week. But the way I'm feeling right now, and we don't know who the Eagles are playing yet, but I think that we'll see how both teams play tonight, but there's a good chance I'm taking an upset in that game in Philadelphia next week. These two teams, the Eagles and the Lions, are severely injured. And I think they both have a good chance of being upset next week. But we'll see. We have to see what the matchups are. We have to see what the injury reports are. Final injury reports. Okay. And let's move on to the last game. This was the Sunday night game. Commanders at Bucks. Now, a big story for this game through the first couple of quarters was Mike Evans was playing fantastic. And Baker, to Mike Evans, was playing fantastic. And what I found so interesting was Chris Collinsworth, who's so hit or miss with me. Sometimes he just says a lot of nothing. Last night, I actually thought he was really good. And he was speaking about how Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans, who have a history together, Marshawn Lattimore insisted he play one-on-one with Mike Evans, and how the coaching thought that maybe they should double at Mike Evans. And it was one of those things where it did not work out for Marshawn Lattimore. I mean, Mike Evans tore him up. Finally, they started covering him. They started doubling him later in the game, and they were down 17-10 going into the fourth, and they end up winning on a famous doink walk-off field goal to win 23-10. And so the Commanders were the only team, the only non-division winners to win yesterday and to win this weekend. So now they play the Lions. Let's go back and review what I said. I said I didn't think Jayden Daniels was going to be good, and he was. 110 QBR, clearly proved me wrong. And so that matchup is set. That's going to be Commanders at Lions. I think that's going to be a great game. And so the only game we have left is Vikings at Rams, and our pick for that is +3. Rams plus 3. Okay. Let's move on to the NBA. So, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been a topic on this show for a while. They've been atop the Eastern Conference, but I've never really felt good about them. And yesterday, they lost to the Pacers 108-93, and their 12-game losing streak came to an end. And this game, I think, personifies exactly what I've been feeling for the last couple weeks. Look, when you're playing as well as the Cavs are, and you're winning as much as they are, you are entitled to a loss. Let's get that out of the way. You're not going to go undefeated. They were not winning out. That being said, the offense did not look good. The Pacers have the 21st ranked defense in the NBA, and they were able to keep the Cavs under 100 points. And so again, as I've said, you're the Cavs. When it comes down to it, and you need to win 7-game series, plural, series is, even with home court advantage in the playoffs throughout the whole playoff, this Cavs team, does not seem like the kind of team that is going to be able to pull out multiple series wins. And we'll see. But the thing is, in the NBA, you need firepower. You need star power. And the narrative around Donovan Mitchell has always been, is he a big enough star? Is he a 1A or is he a 1B? We see that so much in the NBA. I had ranted for years about how Julius Randle was a 1B. Nothing more. Great scorer. But when push comes to shove, he cannot take over a game. And so where does Donovan Mitchell fall? Is he the kind of guy that can take over a 7-game series, that can propel you, that can lift you, that can overpower other teams and other defenses? Or is he the kind of guy puts up big numbers, but when push comes to shove, he can't get it done? And again, this team, it's not like it's so much different than the solid Cav teams of past years. They're really overperforming. Give Kenny Atkinson all the flowers in the world. But ultimately, yesterday showed they have flaws. Okay, the only other real big thing in the NBA over the weekend was that the 76ers, they have a whole new arena drama. They were supposed to, they had a new arena approved for Center City in Philadelphia. And then that was just struck down yesterday, so now they're going to build it in their old location that they were supposed to build it in South Philly. And so that's just something to follow. Just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Okay, to the NHL. Overwatch. We had Overwatch. And not only did we have Overwatch, but we're closer, baby. He scored an empty net goal on Saturday. He's now 22 goals away. Caps are the number 1 team in the East. They've got 39 games left, and he's 22 away. So we will see if he has a shot. He's going to get... Look, is he going to do it? Probably not. This season, I'm saying. He'll do it. Is he going to do it this season? Probably not. But he's going to get so close, it's going to be so fun down the stretch. The other story this weekend was Cutter Gauthier. He returned to Philly. So this was a guy that they drafted out of... He was playing out of Boston College. The Flyers drafted him in 2022. He told them that night he will not sign with them. And after an entire drama... And think about this. So you have a player in any sport. You have a player that you draft, but publicly says does not want to sign with you. And so you lose all the leverage in the world once you decide you're going to trade him. You lose every sort of bargaining chips that you have. It was a very weird situation because he clearly didn't want to play there, and the Flyers clearly were going to trade him. And so you just lose leverage. And give the NHL credit, because I remember at the time when this was happening that it was being reported that teams were trying to, be fair about it and offer proper value back for Cutter Gauthier. And so Saturday he came back to Philly for the first time. He got eviscerated by the crowd. And the Flyers got the last laugh. They won 6-0. But this was just kind of a follow-up from all that drama a few years ago. Cutter Gauthier comes back. And he's been pretty good. He scored 2 goals yesterday. This was Saturday. He scored 2 goals yesterday. And I think the OT winner for the Flyers. This was, and this was all those years ago, a couple of years ago. This was just such good storyline. And the reason why I love bringing this stuff up is because I just find hockey to have the best drama, the best stories. And so that was something that I just wanted to revisit. Okay, let's move on to baseball. So we had a couple of interesting developments over the weekend. And the first one was that the Blue Jays get a big-ish signing. They're set to be on every free agent. And so they signed Jeff Hoffman, reliever, to a 3-year, $33 million deal. Now, it was reported earlier in the offseason that he may be willing to convert to being a starter. Remember, the Mets signed Clay Holmes as a starter last offseason. The Royals signed, a couple of offseasons ago, the Padres converted Seth Lugo to be from a reliever to a starter. And this is kind of the new trend, right? How are teams going to be able to get better quality innings? Let's take relievers who are cheaper to sign them as starters and extend them to be starters, and we'll have essentially cheaper labor. Last season with the Phillies, Jeff Hoffman threw 61 1/3 innings to a tune of 2.13 ERA, and he's going to be signed as a reliever. And look, this was a really nice signing by them. They already added Yimi Garcia earlier in the offseason, and they make their bullpen stronger with Jeff Hoffman. This is exactly what teams are doing. We've seen it the last few off seasons. Teams are not signing the high-end pitchers anymore. We saw it last year with Blake Snell. We're seeing it this year to a lesser extent, but Jack Flaherty is still on the market. Corbin Burns, he got opt-outs. We are seeing teams not wanting to commit a lot of years to pitchers. And a result of that is we are seeing teams want to give commitments to relievers, and they're finding other ways to fill the innings that they need pitched. And so, yeah, you're seeing 3 years, $33 million deals handed to relievers because teams are saying, let's fill in innings that way. The idea is fill your bullpen with great pieces, and then they'll piece together the rest. How they will get starting pitching and good innings from starting pitchers. And so the Blue Jays make a nice move. Now, the other big story over the weekend in baseball was that Ken Rosenthal reported that Pete Alonso is willing to take a 3-year deal with the Mets. And this was notable because he had been looking for a 6 to 8 year deal earlier. It was reported that the Mets were looking for something a little shorter, like a 3-year deal with a high average annual value with opt-outs. And so over the weekend, randomly, the media reports that, Pete Alonso now is the one willing to take the 3-year deal. And the Mets, and only with the Mets. And they said, it's only with the Mets. It's a limited offer with the Mets. And if they don't accept after the weekend, they're going to move on from this deal. And by the way, it's Monday morning now. He has still not agreed to any deal with the Mets. So, not to pat myself on the back, I've been saying this since the regular season was still happening. Pete Alonso was inevitably going to be a free agent long into the offseason. He was too far apart from the reality of what his market would be. I have said that he is not even close to worth what his asking price is. And now the Mets have Pete Alonso exactly where they want him. And not only that, he's out here saying he's willing to take what they're willing to give him. They're still only bidding against themselves. That's why it's Monday morning and we haven't gotten a deal yet. But Scott Boras has seemingly come down from his initial offer. Look, guys, make this happen. David Stearns. Cook, man. Do whatever you need to do. But both sides need to figure out a way to make this happen. Let's just do this. Move on. Move on to pitching. Move on to maybe adding another bat after Pete. Ken Rosenthal also reported that Jack Flaherty and Anthony Santander were willing to take short-term deals. Again, this is a direct result to teams not in the year 2025. Teams do not want to commit to high-end pitching, and they do not want to commit to aging power bats. If you are not athletic, you do not profile to age well. It kind of boils down to as simple as that. And if you don't profile to age well, teams are not going to take long-term chances on you. But the fun thing is, so many teams can use players like this on short-term deals. I hope this is the future. Let these players that can't get the long-term deals have high average annual values on their deals and prove-it contracts. It's a win-win for everyone. The players get paid. Teams don't have to commit long-term. And everybody wins. Okay, that's the show. Tomorrow we'll discuss the winner of Vikings-Rams. We'll also discuss everything else that's happening today in the sports world. Have a great day.